When we are working with the circumference of a circle, we need to know what the formula for the circumference of a circle is. So the circumference of the circle is equivalent to the perimeter of quadrilaterals and shapes with straight sides. So the circumference just means the outside part of our circle, which has a circular outside. Right, so the circumference of a circle is equal to 2 pi r, which is equal to pi times diameter. And the reason that 2 pi r is equal to pi times diameter is because 2 multiplied by our radius is equal to our diameter. So we can use either of these formulae. And remember that pi can be equal to 3 or 3.14 or 22 over 7. So it depends on what the question specifies. Your teacher might specify that you first work with pi equal to 3. The question might ask that you use pi equal to 3.14 or that you use pi equal to 22 over 7. So let's have a look at this circle with a radius of 14 centimeters, and let's find the circumference of this full circle using firstly pi equal to 3. So circumference equals 2 pi r, and that's equal to 2 multiplied by pi, which is 3, and multiplied by 14, which is our radius. And that will give us an answer of 6 times 14, which is equal to 84 centimeters. Right, so if we have a look at the circumference of this same circle using pi times diameter, the circumference, the formula here would be pi times diameter, which is equal to pi, which is 3 multiplied by our diameter. Now, if our radius is equal to 14, then our diameter must be equal to 28, which is double 14. And 3 multiplied by 28 gives us an answer of 84. And again, we have our answer in centimeters. Remember that when we are working with circumference or perimeter, we never have measurement squared. It is just our simple measurement to the power of 1, or just the normal measurement. Right, so if we have a look at the circumference of this circle using pi equal to 3.14, we can say 2 times pi times r. You can choose whichever formula you'd like to use. And then this would be 2 multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 14, because our r is our radius. And our radius is equal to 14. So this will give us an answer of 2 times 3.14 and then multiplied by 14, which gives us an answer of 87.92 centimeters. If we have a look at the circumference of the circle, again using 3.14 as pi, but using our pi d formula, we will see that we end up getting the same answer. So pi times d is equal to 3.14 multiplied by 28, because our diameter is 28 if the radius is 14. And that gives us an answer again of 87.92 centimeters. Let's now have a look at finding out what the circumference of the circle is using pi d when pi is equal to 22 over 7. So pi d is equal to pi times d, and pi in this case is 22 over 7, and we're multiplying by our diameter, and because our radius is 14 centimeters, our diameter is going to be 28 centimeters, and we can put that over 1, and what we can now do is cross cancel. So 7 fits into itself once, and 7 fits into 28 4 times, and what we end up with is 22 multiplied by 4, which is equal to 88 centimeters. If we now have a look at the circumference of this same circle using 2 pi r as the formula for our circumference, we will find that we end up with the same result when we are using pi equal to 22 over 7. So the circumference is equal to 2 times pi times r, so 2 times by 22 over 7 multiplied by our radius, which is equal to 14, and we can put that over 1, and we can put our 2 over 1 as well, so that we are just working with fractions. And what we can now do is cross cancel. So 7 into itself once, 7 into 14 twice, and then we say 2 times 22, which is 44, and 44 multiplied by 2 is again 88 centimeters. So as you can see, our 88 centimeters there and our 88 centimeters there are equal to each other. So just remember that pi times diameter is equal to 2 pi r, and these here are the formulae for your circumference of your circle, and you can choose whichever one you would like to do. It might just depend on the type of question that is asked. It also might depend on what your radius or your diameter might be. When we are working with the circumference of fractions of circles, what we need to do is work out the fraction of the full circumference. So in this case, we are working with a semicircle, which is half of a full circle. So we work out half of the full circumference, which we now know is 2 pi r, or pi times d. And so that will give us what this area over here is. That will give us half of the full circumference of a circle, which is just that outside curved area there. And we plus the diameter, because this part here, is the diameter, which is not part of the circumference of a full circle. So what we actually do with the circumference of fractions of circles is we don't call it circumference, we actually call it the perimeter, because it includes some straight sides as well as curved sides. So we end up with half of our full circumference, and we always plus our diameter to that at the end to account for this part here. Right, so if we would like to work out the perimeter of this fraction of a circle, or of this semicircle, using pi equal to 3, we just need to follow our formula very carefully. We can write half multiplied by, because of is equal to a multiplication, 2 pi r, and 2 pi r will be equal to 2 times 3 times our radius, and because our 12 here is our diameter, so 12 equals diameter, then 6 will equal our radius. So that will be 2 times 3 times 6, and then we plus our diameter at the end. So remember that we always do of first, so we're going to do that first, and we can put that over 1 so that we are working with fractions. And we end up with half multiplied by 2 times 3 times 6 is 36 over 1. So half of 36 is equal to 18, or we can cross cancel and say 2 into itself once, 2 into 36 goes 18 times, or we can just say half of 36, and we remember to always plus our diameter. What we can actually do here is already plug in what our diameter is, which is 12. Right, so then we've got 18 plus 12, and that gives us an answer of 30 centimeters. So the perimeter of this semicircle is equal to 30 centimeters. Let's now have a look at the perimeter. Let's just separate that there. The perimeter of this semicircle using pi equal to 3.14. So let's work out half of, let's use pi d this time, because remember that pi d is equal to 2 pi r. So pi times our diameter, and then we remember to plus our diameter at the end. So we end up with half of, or multiplied by pi, which is 3.14, multiplied by our diameter, which is 12, and then we plus 12 at the end. So we remember to work with that first, and we can put that over 1. So let's just use a different color so we can see more clearly. So we end up with half multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 12, which was our pi d. So that equals 37.68 over 1. And we remember to keep bringing down our plus 12 so that we don't forget to plus our diameter at the end. And then we end up with 37.68 over 2 plus 12, and 37.68 over 2, or 37.68 divided by 2, is equal to 18.84, and then we plus our 12, and we end up with an answer of 30.84 centimeters. Right, so that is what the perimeter of this semicircle will be when we are using pi equal to 3.14. Let's now have a look at the perimeter of this semicircle using pi equal to 22 over 7. So let's look at pi, or half of pi d, and we remember to plus our d at the end, our diameter, and that is equal to half of, or multiplied by 22 over 7 multiplied by 12, because that is our diameter. We can put that over 1, and then we plus 12 at the end. So that we end up with an answer of 132 over 7, because we could cross cancel there. So 2 fits into itself once, and 2 fits into 22 11 times. So 11 times 12 gives us our 132 there, and then that's put over 7, and then we remember to plus 12. So 132 over 7 is equal to 18.85, and then we plus our 12, and that gives us a final answer of 30.85 centimeters. Because we are now working with a quarter of a circle, and we are wanting to find the circumference, or rather let's say the perimeter of this quarter of a circle, because we are now working with some straight lines as well as curved lines, we call it the perimeter rather. So the perimeter of a quarter of a circle is, again, we work out a quarter of the full circumference of the circle, and then we plus the diameter. And the reason we plus diameter is because this radius and this radius add up to one diameter. So you can say plus radius, or plus 2 radii, or plus 2r, or you can just say plus diameter, because that will be the case for any fraction of a circle. Whenever we're working out the perimeter of any fraction of a circle, we will always work out the fraction of the full circumference and then plus diameter. So this over here, a quarter of 2 pi r, will give us what this curved bit here will be. And that's why we have to add diameter at the end, because it's not just this curved bit that we are looking for. We are also looking for what these two straight lines are, which we know that's 3 and 3 there. Right, So a quarter of 2 pi r, let's first work the perimeter of this quarter of a circle out using pi equal to 3. So we've got a quarter of, or multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3, which is our pi, and multiplied by 3 again because we've got a radius of 3. And then we remember to plus our diameter, which is equal to 6, because if our radius is equal to 3, then our diameter is equal to 6 meters. Right, and we end up with a quarter of, or multiplied by 2 times 3 times 3, which is equal to 18 over 1, and then we plus our 6, and a quarter of 18 we can cross cancel. 2 into 4 goes twice, 2 into 18 goes 9 times, and we end up with 9 over 2, or 9 divided by 2, which is equal to 4.5, and then we plus 6 to get an answer of 10.5 meters. Right, so the perimeter of this quarter of a circle is equal to 10.5 meters when we are using pi equal to 3. Let's have a look at the perimeter of this quarter of a circle using pi equal to 3.14. And let's, in this case, use pi d as our circumference of the full circle. And then let's divide that by 4, because remember, putting something over 4 or dividing it by 4 is exactly the same as working out a quarter of that number. So pi d is equivalent to 2 pi r. Those are both the formulae for the circumference of a full circle, so we can use either of those. And because we are just working out 1/4 of a circle, the perimeter of 1/4 of a circle, we can just divide our circumference by 4, and that will give us this curved bit over there. And we again just need to remember to add our diameter at the end. So pi times d is equal to 3.14 multiplied by our diameter, which is equal to 6, and then we put that over 4, or divide that by 4, and remember to plus our diameter at the end. So 3.14 multiplied by 6 gives us an answer of 18.84, and we divide that by 4, and we plus our diameter, which we can plug in now, is equal to 6, and we could have plugged that in here as well. Right, so 18.84 divided by 4 gives us an answer of 4.71, and we plus our 6 to get an answer of 10.71 meters. So the perimeter of this quarter of a circle, when we have a radius of 3 meters, is equal to 10.71 meters when we use pi equal to 3.14. Right, let's now have a look at the perimeter of this quarter of a circle using pi equal to 22 over 7. So again, our perimeter is equal to a quarter of, we can say 2 pi r, or pi times d, and we just need to plus our diameter at the end. So we end up with a quarter of, or multiplied by 2 over 1 multiplied by 22 over 7, which is our pi, and multiplied by 3 over 1, which is equal to our radius, and we plus our diameter at the end. Right, so this gives us an answer of a quarter multiplied, or what we can actually do here is let's first cross cancel. So 1 over 4 multiplied by 2 over 1, 2 fits into 4 twice, 2 fits into itself once, and we can then cross cancel again. 2 fits into itself once, and 2 fits into 22 11 times. So what we end up with is 11. So these are all ones. So that will just all cancel out to become 1. And then we end up with 11 multiplied by 3, which is equal to 33. and 7 by 1 is 7, and we plus our diameter, which is equal to 6. So 33 over 7, or 33 divided by 7, is equal to 4.71 if we just use 2 decimal places, and then we plus our 6, and we end up with an answer of 10.71 meters. So the perimeter of this quarter of a circle, when we are using pi equal to 22 over 7, is equal to 10.71 meters. When we are working with 3/4 of a circle and we are wanting to find the circumference of this 3/4 of a circle, or rather the perimeter of this 3/4 of a circle, we need to work out what 3/4 of the full circumference of the circle would be, and that would give us from this point here all the way around to that point there. And then we need to plus our diameter, because remember our diameter is 2 radii. So radius over here, radius plus radius, will give us our diameter. That is why we plus our diameter when we are working out the perimeter or the circumference of fractions of circles. Right, so let's figure out what the circumference or the perimeter of this fraction, this 3/4 of a circle, will be when pi is equal to 3. So we use 3/4 of our full circumference, which is equal to pi, which is 3, multiplied by our diameter. So 18 here is our radius. So if our radius is 18, then our diameter will be double 18, which is equal to 36. So 36 is our diameter. So we put in 36 there, and we plus our diameter, which is again 36. Right, so now we are working with 3/4 of 3 multiplied by 36 plus 36, and we can work that out to be 3/4 multiplied by 3 times 36, which is equal to 108. We can put that over 1, and then we plus our 36 at the end, remembering BODMAS all the time. So remember that we have to do our of first, and then we change that into a multiplication, which we still have to do first before we add. Right, so 3/4 of 108, what we can do is cross cancel. 4 goes into itself once, 4 goes into 108 27 times. You can work that out on the side. And then we have 3 multiplied by 27, which is equal to 81. And then you plus your 36, and you end up with a final answer of 117 millimeters. So 117 will be the answer, the perimeter to this 3/4 of a circle with a radius of 18 millimeters when we are working with pi equal to 3. Right, let's have a look at the perimeter of this 3/4 of a circle when pi is equal to 3.14. And let's use, so we'll say 3/4 of, and let's use 2 pi r as an alternative formula for the circumference of our full circle, and then we plus our diameter at the end. So 3/4 of, or multiplied by 2 multiplied by pi, which is 3.14, multiplied by our radius, which is now 18, and then we plus our diameter, and we can actually put in our diameter, which is 36. Right, so we just need to work very carefully because we're working with quite complicated numbers when we're working with decimals. So we work out 3/4 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 18. So this answer here will give us 113.04 over 1. And we will remember to plus our 36 at the end. So let's just remember that you need to do this first and then plus. So 3/4 of, or multiplied by 113.04, we just multiply our numerators. So 3 multiplied by 113.04 will give us an answer of 339.12 divided by 4, or over 4. And then we just plus our 36. And we'll obviously do this on the side in a division. So we use our division house to work that out. We put our 4 outside and our 339.12 outside, and you will end up with an answer of 84.78, and then we plus our 36, and that gives us a final answer of 120.78 millimeters. Right, so when we are working with pi equal to 3.14, the perimeter of this 3/4 of a circle with a radius of 18 millimeters will give us an answer of 120.78 millimeters. Right, so now let's have a look at the perimeter of this 3/4 of a circle using pi equal to 22/7. So again, we write down our formula, 3/4 of pi times diameter, let's say, plus our diameter. Right, so 3/4 multiplied by pi, which is 22/7, multiplied by 36/1, which is our diameter, and then we plus our diameter, which is 36. Right. So we now end up with some fractions which we can now cross cancel. So 4 goes into itself once, and we can go straight over to the 36 there and put 4 into 36 9 times, and we can't actually simplify any further. So we end up with 3 multiplied by 22 multiplied by 9, which gives us an answer of 594 over 1 times 7 times 1 is 7, and then we obviously plus our 36 at the end. So 594 over 7, or 594 divided by 7, all you need to do is do that in your division house. 594 divided by 7, and you just give me 2 decimal places. Remember to bring your decimal point up, and you'll end up with an answer of 84.85 plus our 36, and that will give us a final answer of 120.85 millimeters. So when we are working with pi equal to 22/7, the perimeter of this 3/4 of a circle with a radius of 18 millimeters will give us an answer of 120.85 millimeters.